I'm testifying in opposition to this bill titled End of Life Option for Terminally Ill Adults and the amendment that was just passed earlier. This term end of life option is simply a euphemism for physician-assisted suicide. It is harmful to the physician-patient relationship. If I offered assisted suicide as a treatment option, it would coerce patients into considering something that may have previously been unthinkable. The right to die will seem like a duty to die. The bill specifies physician suicide for terminal illness in adults. History shows us that in most of the countries in Europe and now in Canada that have legalized this practice have over time extended it to those with disabilities and to children. I'm concerned about the potential for misuse of this practice in those unable to give informed consent.
People are a gift from God, from the unborn to the aged, the healthy and the sick. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says we are stewards, not owners, of the life that God has entrusted to us. It is not ours to dispose of. House File 1930 is horrific because it is not health care, it is death care. The AMA, American Medical Association, was quoted as saying physician-assisted suicide is fundamentally incompatible with the physician's role as healer. We cannot claim to be concerned with the mental health crisis and rise in suicides and at the same time promote helping someone die on purpose. Trying to legalize suicide by calling it medical aid in dying does not suddenly make it legitimate. Lastly, after experiencing the violating policies that completely destroyed informed consent during COVID, it is easy to see that no potential safeguards will be adequate to stop the inevitable abuses that will occur if you allow assisted suicide. Thank you for listening.
My primary concern with this legislation is that our current healthcare system and workforce shortage are creating conditions that might lead a qualifying person to choose medical aid in dying to end their life. Their quality of life is diminished because of difficulty accessing necessary supports. He absolutely suffered, not because of his illness, but because of the promised supports were delayed or unavailable.
My concern is that for others like me, especially people whose conditions are terminal, that battle may feel pointless. Daily pain takes a mental and emotional toll. My life is no less valuable than anybody else's because I experience daily suffering. No one should be told that their life is not worth living because of a diagnosis. The chronically and terminally ill deserve better than to be treated as expendable.
Not only this legislation is cruel and ruthless, it is also in conflict with the federal law called Assisted Suicide Funding Restriction Act of 1997. How blessed is he who considers the helpless. The Lord will deliver him in the day of trouble. The Lord will protect him and keep him alive. In his illness, you, Lord, restore him to health. Thank you for listening.
I'm opposed to this bill for many reasons. The language here says the person must sign a paper that states they were not coerced into suicide. But what is coercion? Suggesting over and over that they should consider suicide? That they are a drain on everyone. There might not be personnel to take care of them. That, besides taking away hope, is coercion. This legislation is one of death. We know from past legislation that this is just the foot in the door to implement more death legislation. One may expect another amendment that changes the language from voluntary to mandatory suicides for the good of society. And who decides that good? Who lives? Who dies? You are opening a Pandora box of evil. You are trying to play God. You are not God. So stop with the death suggestions, trying to make suicide normal. Don't let this evil into our laws and society. Minnesota deserves better.
So intentionally ending a human life is wrong. It doesn't matter what name we call it. Suicide is not health care. This bill risks promoting additional suicide, despair, and hopelessness in our state. And what's even more concerning is that this law could be misused against vulnerable people groups, especially the elderly, the disabled, people of color, and the poor. First, they push laws with quote-unquote safeguards. And then when a state adopts those laws, those same lobbyists come in and lobby you to expand access.
Life is a sacred gift. Hubert H. Humphrey, a pro-life Democrat, once said, "The moral test of government is how it treats those who are in dawn of life. the children, how it treats those who are in the twilight of life, the aged, and how it treats those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. Unfortunately, the governing majority in Minnesota is failing this test. As our government officials, you have lost sight of the truths that were self-evident to our founders in the Declaration of Independence, quote, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Your chief purpose is to secure the people's right to life, yet these bills only serve to erode that right. This bill refers to medical aid in dying as if helping someone to kill themselves is actually a positive form of care. Changing the name of something doesn't change what it is. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Yet this bill, like the PRO Act, is literal government-sanctioned killing. By what authority do you act in legislating on life and death? Now choose life that you and your children may live. Deuteronomy 30:19. Thank you for your time.
This bill would move Minnesota from a community of compassion to one of active, callous abandonment of our most vulnerable patients. There are no safeguards or guardrails that can protect us from the dangers of any assisted suicide law. Every state, every nation that has passed assisted suicide laws has quickly moved to expand access and remove supposed safeguards. This bill moves Minnesota backwards.
When a person is facing overwhelming problems, we need to eliminate the problems, not the person. Thank you.
And if this bill is passed, you will see an increase of suicides in the veterans community as we go along.
Thank you
So
for your
I categorically think that this needs to be gone.
Thank you.
In all of these situations, I have never encountered a patient request or desire for physician-assisted suicide. Never. We are here because some desire to legalize physician-assisted suicide in our state. This is not about pain control, it's about personal autonomy, but it's not autonomous. It requires physicians to become the gatekeeper of which suicides are supposedly acceptable. I have patients every week on medical assistance, every week, who can't receive wound care because their insurance won't pay for it, but now will pay for them to get narcotics to commit suicide. This decision will affect all of us in our communities and not in a way that will take us in a more caring direction.
Assisted suicide is a disability rights issue and a disability justice issue. Assisted suicide re-weaponizes the medical community against people with disabilities. As a disability rights advocate, I have fought for 30 years to get medical professionals and this community to look beyond Kylan's disabilities and his wheelchair and to see Kylan as a person who has value and worth and whose family fiercely loves him. And with the stroke of a pen, you want to undermine all that disability justice work. And you want to take power from our people and give it to others who can judge us as life unworthy of life.
Okay.
I beg you, please don't do that.
In House File 1930, we have in effect a bill that would tell many of our citizens that their lives are not of equal value to others. In the face of this kind of repulsive suggestion, it should come as no surprise that an organization like the Minnesota Alliance for Ethical Healthcare has come into being in order to give voice to this diverse group of people who each in their own way feel threatened by this legislation.
When I heard about this bill, I was deeply troubled. But then when I read the wording in it, I was horrified and I was heartbroken. This bill is not compassion, and it does not provide a so-called peaceful death. There are no valid safeguards in this bill to prevent coercion and abuse, but the bill does provide a cost savings, and it puts each of us and our loved ones in danger of not receiving the health care we need when we need it most. Passing this bill sends only one message, and that is that we are abandoning our most vulnerable. It is ableism in its most extreme form. Please, I urge you, vote no.